Nearly 2 years after Lisa Marie Presley's passing, one legal document continues to draw interest, not because of sensational headlines or public controversy, but because of the quiet, long-term consequences it set in motion. According to publicly available information, her will played a decisive role in shaping how one of the most recognizable cultural legacies in modern entertainment would continue to be managed. At the time the decision was made, it appeared procedural and unremarkable, handled through established estate planning mechanisms without public attention. There were no press statements, no immediate reactions, and no indication that the document would later become the subject of widespread discussion. Yet as time passed, the importance of that decision became clearer, not through speculation, but through legal context, historical perspective, and the broader realities of managing a legacy of this scale. Lisa Marie Presley was uniquely positioned within the history of popular culture. As the only child of Elvis Presley, she inherited responsibility for a name that carries global recognition and enduring influence. This responsibility extended far beyond personal inheritance. The Presley estate encompasses music catalogs, image rights, trademarks, licensing agreements, and Graceland itself, which functions as both a historical landmark and an active cultural institution. Public records show that following Elvis Presley's death, the estate faced significant financial and organizational challenges. Early mismanagement and tax obligations placed the future of the estate at risk. Over time, through professional guidance, strategic restructuring, and carefully negotiated partnerships, the estate stabilized and grew into a sustainable enterprise. By the time Lisa Marie assumed greater involvement, she was not simply receiving assets, but overseeing a complex organization with long-term obligations. Managing such an estate requires fiduciary responsibility. Fiduciary duty prioritizes the long-term interests of the estate over personal preference or short-term considerations. According to standard estate planning practices, trusts are commonly used in situations involving significant assets and public visibility. Trust structures are designed to provide continuity, protect against instability, and ensure that decision-making authority is clearly defined. They also allow estates to operate independently of personal circumstances, ensuring that operations continue smoothly even during periods of transition. In the case of the Presley estate, publicly available information indicates that the trust structure evolved over time, reflecting changes in professional advice, financial strategy, and long-term planning objectives. The amendment that later became a focal point was reportedly executed in 2016. At the time, it attracted little attention outside a limited circle of advisors and legal professionals. According to court filings that later became part of the public record, the amendment altered the trustee structure responsible for overseeing the estate. This change did not immediately transfer ownership or dissolve existing arrangements. Instead, it redefined governance by adjusting who would be responsible for oversight, management, and fiduciary decision-making. In estate planning, such amendments are not uncommon, particularly for estates with ongoing commercial activity and historical significance. Estate professionals often emphasize that changes in governance, while administrative in nature, can have far-reaching implications. Trustees play a central role in shaping how assets are managed, how partnerships are maintained, and how future opportunities or challenges are addressed. While these implications may not be immediately visible, they can become more apparent when circumstances change. In this case, the broader impact of the 2016 amendment became visible only years later, when public attention shifted toward the estate following Lisa Marie Presley's passing. According to public reporting, questions emerged at that time regarding the amendment's execution. These questions were not framed as accusations or allegations of wrongdoing. Instead, they focused on clarity and verification. Parties involved reportedly sought confirmation that the amendment had been executed in accordance with applicable legal standards and that all procedural requirements had been satisfied. This approach reflected reliance on formal legal review rather than public commentary. The distinction between legal clarification and public conflict is significant, particularly in cases involving families whose private decisions unfold under intense public scrutiny. Judicial review of estate documents is often misunderstood. Court involvement does not necessarily indicate dispute or misconduct. Courts serve a supervisory role, ensuring that legal instruments comply with established laws and that fiduciary responsibilities are properly defined. In the Presley estate matter, publicly available records indicate that the court examined standard elements such as signatures, dates, formatting, and consistency with trust law. These reviews are routine for estates of this scale, particularly when long-term commercial and cultural interests are involved. Throughout the process, reporting relied on verified filings and cautious language, emphasizing confirmed facts rather than interpretation. The restrained tone of public reporting reflected the procedural nature of the review. Phrases such as "according to court records" and "based on publicly available filings" were consistently used, underscoring the absence of definitive conclusions beyond those formally established. This careful framing helped prevent speculation from overshadowing the legal process. It also reinforced the idea that the matter was being addressed within appropriate institutional frameworks, rather than through public debate or media-driven narratives. Beyond legal considerations, the situation carried emotional complexity that legal documents cannot fully capture. Lisa Marie Presley navigated multiple roles throughout her life, including those of estate steward, parent, family member, and public figure. Balancing these roles under constant public attention presents challenges that extend beyond legal definitions. During the period following her passing, public statements related to the estate remained notably restrained. There were no prolonged public disputes, no inflammatory rhetoric, and no sustained media campaigns. This restraint suggested an effort to manage the situation privately and professionally, even as public interest continued. Eventually, according to verified court outcomes, the amended trust structure was upheld. This confirmation established that the legal requirements for validity had been met. It did not imply misconduct or assign fault. Instead, it affirmed continuity, allowing the estate to proceed under a confirmed governance framework. For large estates, continuity supports long-term planning, operational stability, and preservation of value. In the context of cultural legacies, stability is often essential to maintaining historical integrity and ongoing public engagement. As of the most recent publicly available information, the Presley estate continues to operate under this confirmed structure. Graceland remains open to visitors, licensing agreements remain active, and the estate continues to function as a living institution rather than a static inheritance. There are no widely reported ongoing disputes related to the trust. Over time, the narrative surrounding the will evolved. What initially appeared uncertain became clearer as legal processes concluded and outcomes were documented. The broader significance of this story lies in its implications rather than its personalities. It illustrates how estate planning functions in environments of extraordinary visibility. Decisions that might occur quietly within private families can become widely discussed when associated with globally recognized names. This dynamic often shapes public perception, even when legal processes follow standard procedures. Timing in such cases can influence understanding as much as substance. The case also highlights the importance of documentation and structure in long-term planning. Legal frameworks are designed to operate independently of public reaction, prioritizing continuity and fiduciary responsibility. Similar decisions occur quietly in countless families each year, rarely attracting attention. In high-profile cases, those same decisions are subject to public interpretation long after they are made. This contrast underscores the difference between private governance and public narrative. Lisa Marie Presley's will did not redefine her legacy. It clarified how stewardship of that legacy would continue. With time, emotional reactions gave way to broader understanding. The story became less about immediate response and more about process, responsibility, and the systems designed to preserve cultural institutions beyond individual lifetimes. The estate's continued operation demonstrates how long-term planning can sustain a legacy even as public attention shifts. This perspective invites reflection beyond a single case. How many other well-known estates were shaped by decisions finalized years before the public became aware of them? How often does timing influence interpretation more than intent? And what lessons can be drawn from the way these legacies are managed once initial attention fades? Legacy is rarely defined by a single moment. It is shaped through planning, documentation, and frameworks designed to endure beyond individual circumstances. In examining stories like this, it becomes clear that some of the most influential decisions are also the least visible at the time they are made. Over time, The Presley estate became an example frequently referenced by professionals who study legacy management. Not because of conflict, but because it illustrates how long-term planning operates when public attention is unavoidable. In estates tied to cultural heritage, decisions are rarely made with short-term visibility in mind. Instead, they are shaped by considerations that extend decades into the future. These considerations include preservation, licensing stability, contractual obligations, and the ability to adapt to changes in the entertainment industry without compromising historical value. Publicly available analyses of similar estates suggest that one of the greatest challenges in legacy planning is separating emotional expectations from structural responsibility. Families often associate inheritance with personal relationships, while legal frameworks focus on sustainability and governance. When these perspectives intersect, misunderstandings can arise, not necessarily because of disagreement, but because the goals of each system differ. In high-profile cases, these misunderstandings can be amplified by public interpretation, even when legal processes remain standard and measured. In the years following the confirmation of the trust structure, the Presley estate continued to function with relative stability. Graceland maintained its role as both a historical site and an active destination for visitors from around the world. Licensing agreements related to music, branding, and merchandise continued to operate under established frameworks. These outcomes reflected the core objective of most trust-based estate plans: continuity without disruption. The absence of ongoing disputes allowed the estate to focus on long-term objectives rather than short-term resolution. Observers who study estate governance often emphasize that stability itself is a result. When an estate continues to operate without interruption, it indicates that systems are functioning as intended. In this context, the outcome of the Presley Estate Review demonstrated how legal mechanisms can absorb change without destabilizing the institutions they protect. This aspect of the story is sometimes overlooked because it lacks dramatic elements, yet it represents the foundation upon which enduring legacies are built. The broader cultural impact of the Presley estate also provides insight into why such planning matters. Elvis Presley's influence extends across generations, genres, and geographic boundaries. Preserving that influence requires careful coordination between legal, commercial, and historical considerations. Decisions made within estate planning frameworks are therefore not solely about asset distribution, but about stewardship. Stewardship implies responsibility to the past, the present, and the future simultaneously. In many ways, the attention surrounding Lisa Marie Presley's will reflects a broader public curiosity about how famous legacies are managed once the individuals most closely associated with them are no longer present. This curiosity often emerges after key moments, when the public seeks clarity about continuity. However, estate planning operates most effectively when it anticipates such moments long before they occur. The 2016 amendment, viewed through this lens, represents a forward-looking decision rather than a reactive one. It is also important to recognize that legal documents are inherently limited in how they communicate intent. While they define authority and responsibility, they cannot fully express personal reasoning or emotional context. As a result, interpretations often rely on timing and outcome rather than documented explanation. This gap between documentation and perception is not unique to the Presley estate. It appears frequently in cases where estates intersect with public interest, reinforcing the importance of understanding legal processes on their own terms. From a historical perspective, many estates associated with cultural icons have undergone similar transitions. In some cases, disputes became prolonged and public. In others, transitions occurred quietly, with minimal attention. The difference often lies not in the decisions themselves, but in how those decisions align with expectations. When expectations are shaped by public narratives rather than legal frameworks, misalignment can occur. The Presley estate case highlights how legal clarity can eventually reframe such narratives. As time passes, the significance of individual decisions often becomes clearer. What once appeared ambiguous may later be understood as deliberate planning. This process of reinterpretation is common in legacy management, where outcomes are evaluated not immediately, but over extended periods. In the case of the Presley estate, the continued operation and preservation of key assets suggests that the underlying structure was designed with durability in mind. This durability is particularly relevant in an era where intellectual property and brand identity play central roles in cultural memory. Estates connected to influential figures must navigate evolving technologies, changing consumer behavior, and shifting legal landscapes. Trust structures provide a mechanism for adapting to these changes without requiring constant renegotiation of authority. They allow estates to respond to new opportunities while maintaining consistency in governance. The story of Lisa Marie Presley's will, when viewed in this broader context, becomes less about a single document and more about the systems that sustain legacy over time. It illustrates how decisions made away from public view can shape outcomes years later. It also underscores the importance of documentation, clarity, and professional oversight in managing assets that carry both financial and cultural significance. For audiences, this story offers an opportunity to reconsider how legacy is defined. Rather than focusing solely on moments of transition, it invites attention to the planning that precedes them. Legacy is not only inherited, it is maintained through structure, foresight, and responsibility. In this sense, the Presley estate serves as an example of how continuity can be achieved even under intense public scrutiny. As interest in celebrity estates continues, similar stories will likely emerge. Each will carry its own context, challenges, and outcomes. Yet common themes will persist. The role of trust structures, the importance of timing, and the distinction between perception and process. Understanding these themes allows for a more informed perspective, one that moves beyond headlines toward a deeper appreciation of how enduring legacies are preserved. Looking ahead, the ongoing operation of the Presley estate suggests that long-term planning remains effective when aligned with professional governance. The absence of ongoing disputes allows the focus to remain on preservation, education, and cultural engagement. This outcome reflects the fundamental purpose of estate planning, not to eliminate complexity, but to manage it in a way that supports continuity. In reflecting on this story, it becomes clear that legacy management is an evolving process rather than a fixed outcome. Decisions made at one moment are interpreted through the lens of later events. What matters most is not immediate reaction, but long-term effect. The Presley estate, shaped by decades of planning and adaptation, continues to demonstrate how structure and foresight can sustain cultural influence across generations.